Well, welcome to humanity and welcome to the Welcome to Humanity podcast. This is Dr. Fred, and I'm here today with what turns out to be my second podcast of the day, back to back. And although that won't appear likely or important to you, to me, it's great because my intention is to just have podcasts all day long. I just want to wake up and have podcasts, like 10 or 12 of them a day, and then go to bed. And, maybe I'll sleep and go to the restroom and pet my cats and take a walk and, do some exercising and think about my next meeting. Because what ends up happening when I podcast is I meet really great people up to really great things and, really just get to be curious around them. Well, what is happening? Who are you and what are you doing here is a main question. And what the Welcome to Humanity podcast ethos is really just shining a bright light, really focusing on people who roll into the space, who are up to making a difference and who are up to taking who they are and contributing to the society around them in a powerful, productive, positive way. And I'm pretty sure that's who we have here today. What's so interesting is that Michael and I have not met. In fact, right before we started speaking, we were like, how do we know each other? We don't even know how we know each other. And now we're sort of locked into a podcast for which Michael just became the most important person in my life for the next short period of time. But not only for the next short period of time, for now, which is all we have anyways, the man who is the most important person in my life, bar none, is our guest. And so Michael Ciorrocco is here with us, and it is my honor and privilege to introduce our listeners, Michael, to us, to you in particular, as you got yourself on a podcast. There's something about book me on your podcasts. And I'm so curious about that because I'm spending the week with people booking me on podcasts this week. And I'm going to be on some high-level podcasts this week where hundreds of thousands or millions are going to have access to conversations I'm about to have with other podcasters. And what an interesting way to get a step up into the podcast world. And this week is my first formal launch into being on a lot of high-powered podcasts. So tell us a little more about who you are and what is this deal? What is this rocket fuel over your shoulder? And what is this deal about Book Me on Your Podcast? How is that working for you, C-Roc? And, give us a clue. Who are you?
Yeah, Dr. Fred, first of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to come on today. I start every interview, I go on with gratitude. It's been such an important part of my life and part of my journey and advancement. So thank you very much. Thank you for your audience for showing up. I'm just a guy that grew up around a lot of broken people. I don't remember my parents ever together. I did every other weekend thing, the custody battles, the child support battles that my parents went through. I witnessed all of that. Then you add step parents into the mix and their agenda. And I grew up around a lot of that conflict. And one of the things about me though is I never ever accepted people's reasoning or excuses for why they were acting a certain way. Mm-hmm. We all tell ourselves a certain story. And, I think we're the only living organisms that justify when we don't have something go our way or we fail. We have to justify it to make ourselves, feel better about ourselves. And so I just never was willing to buy into that. And I started paying attention to that at a young age to the point where I started making sure that I wasn't telling myself the wrong story. And, I was just able to take all the stuff that came my way that would normally stop or slow people down and store it in my tank instead of my trunk, where most people keep it, where it weighs you down. I store it in my tank, convert it into rocket fuel, and I become unstoppable that way. And now I teach others to do that.
So this idea of storing it in my tank instead of my trunk, actually taking these experiences and making them available to you or to us is what you're doing. So some people hide this stuff away. They find things that are uncomfortable about themselves or that they hope nobody ever finds out. And they hunker down and batten the hatches and lock this stuff down, hopefully never to be seen before. And it's a living, breathing organism that is in our way until we take a good peek at it. So for you, it's about putting it into the tank and using it as rocket fuel. Now, your book over your shoulder, our listeners aren't seeing you, with a very cool title called Rocket Fuel, and it looks like it's written by you. So tell us a little bit about Rocket Fuel, written by Michael Ciorrocco.
Yeah, so I guess the next step after having a podcast and going on a bunch of podcasts and being a speaker was to write a book. So a lot of my mentors wrote books, and I figured I was supposed to do that. So I transcribed it, and then I just basically used that as a brain dump, started outlining my story, things that happened in my life and the lessons I've learned, and then how I converted all that into becoming an unstoppable force to what I wanted to do in life and live my life of my dreams. So I wanted to share that with people so that they could see that they could do it themselves. So I just started writing and writing and writing. And I don't ever consider myself a writer, actually. I just put a bunch of stuff together, journals, and it formulated into a book where people can read, very easily read. No big vocabulary words in there. Big font. You can get through it fast. And I had Grant Cardone, Mr. 10X himself, write the foreword for the book. And it's just all about putting things together that would normally come to stop you or slow you down and using it to your advantage. Mm-hmm. But Dr. Fred, I got to tell you, one thing that after I published the book, I started to realize is that once you get your engine, which is your body, yourself, once you get your engine refined enough where you cannot use that old toxic fuel of letdowns and discouraging people and screw ups, there's some kind of line of demarcation where you pass. Your engine becomes refined where you need a higher octane fuel. And after I wrote the book and published it, I realized I don't use that as fuel anymore, that old stuff. I start to use now because I'm thinking differently. My belief lid is like blown off. My dreams and goals and targets that I have in my future, that's become my fuel. And it's such a higher octane fuel. And so I might have to write another book.
If you wrote another book, what might you call it?
I haven't thought that far. I was thinking, my favorite word is inexorable. Yeah. And inexorable means unyielding and I'm unable to be stopped. And I haven't heard that before. And I read it and I might have been reading like an L. Ron Hubbard book. L. Ron Hubbard intrigues me for some reason, some of his books. And I just read that inexorable word and I looked it up and I was like, this is my word, man. Every morning I wake up, I think about that word because sometimes I don't feel like getting up and doing what I have to do. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things are tougher. I just don't feel like it. And I understand that consistency is more important and more powerful than your feelings or whether something's hard or not. Mm. So in order to be consistent, I must be inexorable. And so I think I might write the book titled Inexorable.
Inexorable. That seems pretty great. That probably isn't a book titled that. I think that's a great name. It makes complete sense and I love it. Now, one of the things that I'm sure you've noticed, and if not, I'll draw to your attention, is this word. We're 8 minutes into our conversation. This word unstoppable makes it into your rhetoric pretty frequently. This idea of what you have here, the design of it is to create unstoppability. If you're going to be consistent, you're going to have to be inexorable. You're going to have to not be drowned out by what you might want or not want to do when you wake up in the morning, for instance. You're going to have to be unstoppable in the goals or the outcomes that you intend for yourself into the future. So how is it that what you do leaves us, the listener or anyone who works with you, with a greater opportunity, a greater access to inexorable unstoppability?
Well, by the way, I think that, a lot of my mentors, especially one, Grant Cardone, he always says this thing. He says, you can't fail if you don't quit. It's impossible. And everybody has a fear of failure. So if you have a fear of failure, just don't quit. And then that fear should go away. Right. I'm a very simplistic person. I like binary decisions, either towards or away. Building or destroying. I don't like to add all the other chaos and confusion. Really, nobody's ever successful when they're confused. So I like to simplify things. And so with that being said, my mission, the reason this keeps coming up is my mission in life is that all people are unstoppable to live in the life of their dreams. And everybody wants that. So I'm on a mission to make sure that I touch every single person I possibly can and help guide them in that direction and make them understand that they are, until they're plucked from this planet, they can keep going for anything they want to. And, it's a fun mission and it helps me personally as well.
So is this through one-on-one coaching, or how is it that people would, end up running into you or learning from you, reading your books, or what is it that you...
Yeah. I have a podcast, of course. I've gone on 300 interviews of my, other people's shows. I'm absolutely obsessed when I get onto something. I'll do it over and over again to get good at it, one, and also to just get exposure. The more podcasts you go on, the more people find out about you. I do one-on-one coaching, but mainly what I do now is I'm leaning into tech. The tech space has intrigued me so much. There's infinite scale, infinite reachability. And so we've created a new tech product called Blooprinted. And Blooprinted is, if you could think of, there's a big company that Jeff Bezos owns. I'm not going to promote them right now, but there's a marketplace, right, for products. If you could think of the marketplace for success blueprints, where anybody that's ever been successful in any area builds a blueprint in our software, and people can go to this marketplace and search a topic, a keyword, or one of the architects, we call them, our creators, and they could find their blueprints to success where they would only have to follow steps to get to where they want to go. And as long as they follow the same steps, they should have similar results. My problem in life is, Dr. Fred, I always knew what I wanted. I'd always go get it and be committed to it, but I never knew the steps. And it cost me so much time, money, stress, relationships. I can go on and on and on. And so that's how I'm really serving this mission now, is through tech.
So what is it? What is the cascade? Let's say, for instance, that I feel like I have a vision, but, I'm stuck. I'm like, it ain't going to happen in this lifetime. Like, I'm resigned, and maybe I'm cynical and tired, and maybe I don't think it's worth it, and maybe I'm just like,
I would cut you off before you got that far.
I can keep going, and I'm really just representing every man here. And so what would you do about cutting me off? Why are you cutting me off?
Well, first of all, I would get into, there's a couple things. One is my 3 C's that I always talk about, which I'll get into in a second. But before we do that, it's, what story are you telling yourself? Because we all have a story that we're telling ourselves, right? What you just did was you were telling a story of why you're stuck and this and that. Look, we can either tell ourselves a story of why we're failing or why we're winning. And I think everybody would rather tell a story of why they're winning. And so that's the first thing. I get people to really audit.
It's the same data. It's just the story we tell about it. It's the exact same stuff out there doesn't have to change, but my story changed drastically. Yeah.
Perspective. Exactly. I mean, if you look at the 3 bears, the story of the 3 bears, Goldilocks and the 3 bears, I think I've seen 2 different versions of that. One was these bad, wicked bears that came in, and then there was another story where they were nice. It's all a perspectives type thing. But I would always start by focusing on the story and making people aware of them and the people that are around them. Start paying attention to people's stories and watch how people justify failure. And it's also called excuses, but I like to talk about the story. The second thing is I always get people into causing and creating futures for themselves intentionally. Look, we all cause and create our future, every single one of us, whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. And so you might as well be intentional about it and create the future that you want. And the last thing I'll tell you is the 3 C's I talk about all the time is clarity, getting clear on what you want. The second one is commitment, deciding to be committed to going after that life. And I don't talk about halfway committed. And there's no half-ass stuff, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. This is 2 feet in, all your butt cheeks, everything into committed. Like everything's got to be in. And then the last thing is consistency, which I mentioned earlier. Consistency is, my formula is greater than your emotions. You got to do things when you don't want to. You do it anyway, because consistency will lead to greatness, as boring as it may be. So
Now, is this primarily, thank you so much for the clarification and for really a little bit of a taste of how you do what you do. Is this primarily for men or women or all people, all ages, or who ends up being your ideal client in this situation?
Well, this is for everybody, of course. I mean, look, human beings in general, right, that have subconscious minds and conscious minds. We got to figure out how to utilize our subconscious mind and, take hold of the power of the conscious mind and really get it working properly on the things it needs to be working on and not blocked by all the bad things that we've taken in, behaviors and beliefs that we've taken in all of our lives. So, I think my ideal client right now, since I'm working on the tech space mainly, is people that have had success in any vertical or any industry or any hobby that want to blueprint their success and impact the planet and make money doing it. That's kind of what I'm focused on right now is my ideal client. And then from there, we're going to get people in, the public in, to buy these blueprints. So at this point, that's my focus.
So say a little bit more. I think about blueprint and I feel like I probably understand what you're saying. I mean, back in the day, a blueprint really represented something that was a blue piece of paper about building the beginning of a building, of what, an intention of the dimensions and the locations of particular aspects of the building, like an actual plan before putting down any foundation. Now, I assume that's what you're talking about in relationship to your blueprint here, but can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you mean when you use the word blueprint? Yeah.
So if you can think about that, a builder trying to build a house without a blueprint and how that would go. We all know that would cost a lot more money, time, stress. We all know the side effects of not having a blueprint to building the house. You never see a builder do that, of course. But yet we go through our lives trying to accomplish things without the blueprint. And I saw a big need for this. And there's a lot of digital video courses, and I saw people going to events all the time and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on these things. And I would keep seeing, Dr. Fred, the same people, and they would never be accomplishing anything. It would just show up to these things. And I'm like, what are they missing? So I started asking questions, and they were missing the steps. What do I do next? What do I do? Like, what's the first thing I do? How many steps are there? I need guidance. And so that's why we created this, so that when somebody buys a blueprint, they get the step-by-step process. All they got to do is follow step one all the way through the end. and they'll have guidance from the people the architects that created the blueprints on what they do if they get stuck on a step. And so, it's kind of project management-ish. It's kind of social media-ish. It's kind of, there's accountability, calendar integration, and text integration in there for accountability. And that's what we've built. We built something that people can actually get transformation. We're taking 100% responsibility as the co-founders of this product to get transformation, not just make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's here is different steps, like what to do when, or what to do next, or now that that's done, it's time for step 2 or step 3, or, like there's a protocol, or maybe not a protocol, but a design that falls into the auspices of what a blueprint is. Now, I do have a question about this I'm really curious about, which is, this idea of doing or being or having certain things. There's some different philosophies about which comes first. Do you be first, or do you do first, or do you have first? And, which one sort of drives things forward? Is there some way I need to be if I'm going to start working with you?
Well, yeah. So here's the thing. We just had this conversation. We're launching 10,000 tech companies in 10 years with the 10X Incubator, which is a company started by Jared Yellen and Grant Cardone. I introduced them, and they started this big tech incubator. And what we're doing is we're trying to bring non-tech entrepreneurs into the tech space. And one of the we have meetings every morning, and we just had this conversation of what you're just talking about here. We have to get these non-tech entrepreneurs that come in with a tech idea that we co-found companies with to start believing that they're tech co-founders, because they don't feel like they are a lot of times. It's something that they just weren't prepared for, but they got into it, and now they have to start telling people that they're tech co-founders. So, I think that they, really wrapping your head around the fact of living something before it happens and believing something before it happens and experiencing emotions that go along with that before you do it, I think that's important. So I would say be first, but the win and the results come from the doing. Let's not get it twisted for a second here. Action is what wins the day.
Yeah.
But, really knowing that you are something allows you to take those actions.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that. Thank you for that clarification as well. So the being is first. I mean, you have to actually know yourself to be this person, and then your actions are either called forth or naturally correlated to that level of being. And that's where the meat is. That's where the power of having contributed is measured in the world of action rather than in the world of being. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dr. Fred, the thing is, when I talk about my mission, right? All people are unstoppable to live in the life of their dreams. Well, what this allows me to do, I've mentioned the binary decisions earlier. Every thought, word, and action that I have has to go towards that, right? To me, that's part of being. My mission is being that, okay? And then that allows me to do things that go towards that. So that's been a huge part of my life. And I can tell you something else. When I do this, it is a form of causing and creating my future intentionally. And what it does is it creates an attraction model. I've never seen anything like this before, where I'm so aligned with my mission and all of my words, thoughts, and actions are going towards it that people see it. And they're instantly attracted, and not in a sexual way, but attracted to wanting to be a part of it, wanting to do business with me, wanting to know what I'm doing. And it is something that I wish upon everyone, because it is phenomenal to see where you're not having to chase things down. People actually come to you. That's all from being aligned with your mission and living through that.
So the key here, what you're speaking towards, is this notion of alignment and, really not having to remember what it is that you need to say or do, because you simply are that who you know yourself to be, such that what comes out of your mouth or what the next action is naturally correlated to the stand that you say you are. I think that's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah. I hear this often. Man, C-Roc, you're so genuine. I can tell that you mean what you say and you live it. And it's part of living to that standard as well. I mean, this is how people can get over imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Imposter syndrome comes when you're not living to the standards that you're talking and preaching about and coaching about. And so, 100%, it allows you to be genuine. Mm-hmm. And it's the greatest thing in the world. Like you have a relationship with someone, like your husband or wife or what have you. There's no more freeing relationship to have than a completely honest relationship. As soon as you interject one dishonesty or one lie, as small as it is, you start interjecting barriers into your relationship that don't need to be there. And so this is the same thing for yourself. Living through your mission is you're giving yourself total honesty, which allows you to be free.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's 2 more questions that I have that have just arisen with this last piece. And again, you're very compelling. And, I really appreciate everything you're doing and the impact you're making on folks. There's something about lying that I want to speak of to now, which is if someone is lying and someone is continually lying about who they are in their relationship, or, maybe not telling an important piece, or, so sort of they call it white lies, but it's actually just as much a lie as an overt bold-faced lie. And that's what they think is holding the entire house of cards alive. Why would it be interesting for them? What about that makes it interesting to find some kind of truth and honesty? It's dude, I'm not giving away my lie here, because this whole nonsense that I've created on the backside of it is built around it. So it would be threatening for me to decide, oh yeah, now I got to tell my wife I have a girlfriend. I mean, that's a classic one, or something like that. Why would someone be drawn to this? What makes people interested?
Well, here's the thing. So in that situation, somebody's concerned with somebody finding something out, and then you live with that feeling somebody might find out. Subconsciously, it encases you, it cocoons you into this cage almost. You don't realize it's happening subconsciously. And a lot of times, look, I mean, everybody lies to themselves. Everybody does. And they lie to others. There's nobody. If somebody tells you they don't lie, they just prove themselves wrong. I mean, let's face it. But to the degree that you can give yourself openness and honesty, you will be freed up to accomplish great things and live a true life. So many people are encased with these dishonesties that they can't they can't do what they want to do. They're so limited in their growth, personally, professionally, financially. A lot of people just don't realize it because it's subconscious. It's in their subconscious.
Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly right. Is that sometimes I'm not lying except for the areas that I don't tell the truth. I mean, no, I'm not a liar. I'm in integrity except for those few areas where I'm not. I mean, but otherwise I am. I tell the truth, especially when it's convenient to tell the truth. But when it's not, then I actually don't. But at least I'm being truthful about not telling the truth, and that should be close enough or something. And it's that's how we live life. It's how we live life, many of us. And so the attraction to, why would I show up with a dude named C-Roc who's got this thing called rocket fuel when my life is kind of run by a few different lies that are holding the, napkin together. And I don't think I'm quite ready to have a big bad dude named C-Roc tear my shit up and, pretend to give me my life back. Why would I do that?
Well, by the way, I'm 5'6" 3/4", so people are always surprised how short I am in person. But I do have a little bit of muscle. But at the end of the day, the biggest lie people tell themselves, one of the biggest things is that they don't need help. They don't need help. Think about that. That's the problem with people that I would try to be of service to, is they think that they don't need help. They have a warped sense of what help is, or they think it makes them less valuable or weaker to ask for help. Once somebody is open to help and open to communicating that they need help, the world opens up to them. And it's counterintuitive to some people because they think that it makes them weaker, or, somebody will judge them off of it. And their ego keeps them from asking for help. So for me, I used to bang my head against the wall trying to get through to people and help them because I know the answers. I can see what they're held up on. And if they would just listen to me, they could be super successful. But then I realized that I got to start with really talking to them about why help's important and get them to understand to ask for help. And that's the breakthrough. That's when I had a breakthrough and I stopped banging my head against the wall.
Well, I have to say, so our listeners don't have this level of vantage point that I have. Mike and I are on video, even though you all are hearing it on audio. I use a video in the background so that we stay intact with each other. And, I'm looking at a brick wall, a dark black brick wall with this, logo and a big bad C-Roc and all honesty and all capital letters. And it reminds me of The Rock and, all sorts of, it's like a push towards strength and sovereignty maybe, or power and awareness, because over your right shoulder, we're looking at this book that's red hot and, that says rocket fuel. And again, Mike C-Roc, Ciorrocco. What is it about C-Roc? And, I think in this last bit here, it's really, I get that, that's your last name, but what does it mean to take that on for yourself? How does that adjust your brand, your personal identity, your sense of your own self?
My friends couldn't pronounce my last name. So a lot of people have issues with that. So they started calling me C-Roc. So I just ran with it. And when I started my speaking career, I started saying, my name is Mike Ciorrocco. My friends call me C-Roc, and people started gravitating towards that. So that showed me, that was market research to, hey, look, let's brand this. So I branded it. And I also, my logo that the audience can't see is a C and an R, and they're contorted a little bit, but it has a little man inside putting his hands in the air like he's holding up the earth and helping hold up the planet. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, some people would say, well, man, you're a legend in your own mind, right? But at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about thinking big and really saying, okay, I want to help some people, right? But why would I only want to help one or two people? Let's try to do something that impacts the planet. And if I aim for that size, matter of fact, if there's aliens, which I don't know if there is, it's, people start getting wigged out when you start talking about aliens. But if there's aliens, like, let me help as many people as I possibly can and the aliens. And then if I come up a little short, I did a great job. So that's just a mindset that I have, is go big and try to help a lot of people. And I've been mentored that way. I mean, Grant Cardone acts that way. So it's probably where some of it came from.
Yeah. So now you've mentioned Grant, I think 3 or 4 times. So we can't get off the show without really talking a little bit. You introduced Grant to some important people. Many of us know who Grant is, at least peripherally, and some of us have studied some of his work and some of his effort in the world of, creating powerful motivation, a life that matters. So tell me a little bit about Grant, who wrote the foreword for your book, and your relationship. Tell us a little bit more about who you are with Grant Cardone.
Well, it started out for me reading the 10X rule. And I read the 10X rule after my brother told me about it. And he said, Mike, this book, this guy sounds just like you. And I said, let me read it. And I read it. And I was like, wow, he's talking to me. Like, I could feel it, and I connected with him. And I'm like, dude, I just got to dive into this stuff. I got to immerse myself in this content, which I did. And I spent a lot of time studying his content and him as a man himself, because I saw his journey, what he took. And I'm like, well, I want to try this journey as well, but I don't want to try it just to end up where he is. I want to see if I can go past it. And then I started thinking to myself, well, you know what? Why start from scratch? Why wouldn't I champion his mission, which is to reach 7 billion people and teach them to 10X their lives? And I said, you know what? There's nothing wrong with championing someone else's idea and carrying it further, helping boost it even further, helping that person. So I created my brand, but also, I have no problems drafting behind someone on their mission if it aligns with mine. And so that's the way I started thinking. And then I started thinking to myself, well, how can I elevate him further when he's a hundreds of millionaire and has a successful business, is known by millions of people, and I'm working my way up there, but how could I help him? And I started thinking, when I met my co-founder, Jared, in the tech company, wow, tech. If we could just get tech into his portfolio, I mean, man, this will blow the real estate away if we could do this right. So that's that thought process I had with that. And then I connected him and Jared Yellen, and they hit it off and started 10X Incubator. And now we're off and running. And this has the potential, Dr. Fred, just so you know, in tech, I mean, money doesn't even seem real, the levels of money that you get in tech. And so it's not all about money, but just how I could help someone advance their play. Money helps. You put money into something, you can go further. You can get louder. And so, now we're business partners. Blooprinted, the tech product that I have, we're partnered in that. And I have another product behind that one coming out as well. So it's just look, let's see how far we can take this thing kind of mentality.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, that's really amazing. And it's amazing that you're creating, your level of alignment is indeed inspiring. Like, you sort of really embody this notion that you don't have to remember what to say next, or what would the C-Roc brand say in this situation. You simply are the brand, which is the goal of so many entrepreneurs, is to have a business that's so aligned with who they are that they never even know that they're working when they're working, because they're 100%. Just being who they be.
100%. That's exactly it. Like, my wife says, you're always working. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm living, baby.
Yeah. So you mentioned your wife. Do you have children?
Yes.
Mike, how many children do you have?
I've been married 18 and a half years to my wonderful wife, Jennifer. She's just a beautiful person inside and out. And my kid's 15 is my son, Nicholas, and my daughter's just turned 9. Her name's Sophia, but she goes by Tiny on social media. Tiny C-Roc.
Tiny C-Roc. All right. That's beautiful. And if people want to get in touch with you, maybe there's someone who really is moved a little bit by, now's the time, access to who you are in order to bring a life that really works to a life that's almost really working. How would they get in touch with you?
Well, I made it really easy. I'm omnipresent all over social media. So any social media platform, especially Instagram or LinkedIn, if you shoot me a message on there, or if you want to go to Blooprinted, that's BLOO. Instead of the color blue, BLOOprinted.com/VIP. If you go there, you can check out the new product platform that we have, and you can reach me through there as well.
All right. Awesome. Well, Is there anything else you want to add? Maybe I didn't touch on something. You're like, Fred, man, you should have asked me about this or that, or I forgot to say this, or is there anything else you want to say to our listeners who are probably really interested in, wow, this is pretty cool. Fred doesn't always have C-Roc on, and today he does. So what is it that, what is it you want to bring forth before we taper on off?
Yeah, look, I think that, I'm a human being just like everyone else. And there's times where I go through times where I'm like, am I really unstoppable? I need encouragement as well. So when I come on a lot of podcasts, a lot of people think, man, it's great that he's like that. I mean, and I can't be like that because I feel differently sometimes. And I feel like that too. And that's why it's so important to every single day I write my goals down. I'm clear on what I want so I can focus on where I'm going rather than the distractions. And I'm fighting the good fight too. I'm with everyone. Mm-hmm. And so, just know that you're not alone. We all go through it. But once you start figuring this thing out, it becomes easier the further you go.
Right. Yeah. There's something about alignment. And when it's aligned, then there's all the yuck and stuff, all the veneer seems to wash off and you get to live a life that's purposeful, intentional, and, aligned with created future and a vision. And it sounds like to me that at least at this point in time, you've really succeeded in having your life go that way and can bring forth tools from practices to others to actually make their lives go that way. And that sounds like what your dedication is in this world. Is that fair to say?
Oh, 100%. I want to be a role model to people so that they want to ask the question, like, what are you into? Like, what did you do to get there? And then I can share that with them. Mm-hmm. I don't want to just preach it and not live it.
Right.
So, that's kind of where I stand with that.
Right. So walking the walk is, as they say, is one way to look at that, but it's really more than that. You've done a lot of work to find yourself. You've probably landed on your face a few times, and there's probably places where you ran into failure, what was then failure, until you realize that you can't fail if you don't quit. And there is a real opportunity for those of us who are maybe struggling or wondering, what am I going to do next? Am I really unstoppable? Those kinds of things, to really reach out and take a peek at upgrading their life. And it seems to me, Mike, that that's exactly what you're offering inside of Who You Be. So thanks for being that dude. It's really, really, really cool.
Well, thank you very much for that. And Dr. Fred, appreciate your time and the opportunity to share with you and your audience today.
Yeah, it's really great to have you. And I look forward to future contacts with you in whatever capacity. And rock on, rock to the rock star. C-Roc is our folks. If C-Roc is our guest today, it's been a pleasure to be with you. An honor, a privilege. It's really nice to meet you, and to meet you in an open forum like this in front of my and your listeners is just a gift. So thanks, C-Roc. It's really been great.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right. Take it easy. Bye for now. And bye, listeners. We'll catch you on the flip side. Love y'all. And welcome to humanity.